Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump hosts Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara at the White House today, marking the first visit by a Syrian leader to Washington. The government will open soon after several Democrats joined Republicans on a bipartisan deal. It got just enough votes to advance and will now go back to the House for approval on minor changes. President Trump is asking air traffic controllers to return to work amid ongoing flight cancellations. The president is offering $10,000 for controllers who didn't stop working despite the government shutdown. The Supreme Court today has declined to overturn a 10-year-old ruling on same-sex marriage, plus a ruling on mail-in ballots and oral argument on matters involving religious freedom. President Trump grants pardons to more than 70 figures linked to efforts surrounding the 2020 election, including Rudy Giuliani. Changes coming to women's menopause treatment. The FDA announced it's working to remove the strongest type of warning it can issue, a black box warning from hormone therapy.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. President Trump is hosting Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara at the White House today. It's the first visit by a Syrian leader to Washington. The meeting comes 6 months after Trump and Sarah met in Saudi Arabia. Sarah was seen playing basketball yesterday in Washington, D.C. The Syrian leader took office in December 2024 after the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad. Last December, the United States dropped a $10 million counter-terrorist bounty against Shara. Now, a deleted bounty notice against Shara notes his role in founding the Newsroom Front and leading the group through its reorganization into HTS. The bounty notice further stated that the group had taken part in kidnappings and killings in Syria over the years, including the 2015 slaying of 20 Druze villagers. The United States revoked the designation of HTS as a foreign terrorist group in July. The Supreme Court today is rejecting calls to overturn its landmark 2015 decision that legalized same-sex marriage nationwide. But the justices have agreed to hear a case that challenges the counting of mail-in ballots received after Election Day. NTD's Arlene Richards has more.
The Supreme Court justices on Monday declined to hear an appeal from a former Kentucky court clerk who refused to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples. The justices turned away Kim Davis, who said her faith prevented her from complying with the High Court's 2015 ruling. In September 2015, a federal judge jailed her for contempt of court. She was released after her staff issued the licenses on her behalf. 3 current justices dissented from the 2015 decision, including Justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Chief Justice John Roberts. In other court decisions on Monday, the justices agreed to hear a case that challenges the counting of mail-in ballots received after Election Day. The state of Mississippi will defend a state law challenged by Republicans that allows a 5-day grace period for mail-in ballots received after Election Day to be counted. A lower court ruled the law was illegal. The justices are expected to hear the state's appeal and rule on it by June. And on the oral argument docket Monday, the justices will hear a case involving an individual's right to sue a government official for violations of a religious land law, and another case addressing a technical issue that has circuit courts divided over how soon an individual can appeal a case that's been terminated. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
An end to the 41-day government shutdown is now in sight. On Capitol Hill late last night, a handful of Democrats voted with Republicans on a plan to reopen the government. There are still a few more steps before it takes effect, but it's a promising breakthrough. House Speaker Mike Johnson said this morning the House should vote as soon as possible. NTD's Melina Weiskup reports.
Late Sunday night, senators broke a lengthy stalemate over government funding. 8 Democrats joined Republicans to advance a bill that will reopen the government after 40 days shut down.
Now, I understand that not all of my Democratic colleagues are satisfied with this agreement, but waiting another week or another month wouldn't deliver a better outcome. It would only
Part of the deal will require Republican leadership to hold a December vote on extending Obamacare subsidies. The vote may or may not pass due to lack of Republican support.
As everybody here knows, that is a totally meaningless gesture. You can get 100 votes here in the Senate. Won't mean anything because the House is not going to take it up.
Republican leaders in both chambers have said that the bipartisan negotiations will continue as they work out a new deal on Obamacare reforms.
These senators are not interested in political games. They're interested in finding real ways to address health care costs for American families. We also have a president who is willing to sit down and get to work on this issue.
Without a guaranteed outcome, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer did not support the deal to reopen the government. Last night's vote was the first step towards reopening. Senators will now attach a new bill to fully fund a few non-controversial aspects of government: military construction, Veterans Affairs, the Department of Agriculture, and the legislative branch. It also includes a stopgap measure to fund the rest of the government through January 30th. House lawmakers will return to Washington this week after nearly 2 months. The new bill is expected to easily pass the lower chamber. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Global shares rose today. Investors were optimistic after the Senate moved forward with a measure to reopen the government. Wall Street's main indexes opened higher this morning. The S&P 500 gained 1%, while Nasdaq advanced 1.6%. The Dow Jones climbed 250 points, or about 0.5%. Here's more on the market reactions.
Sunday's breakthrough helped push Nasdaq futures up over 1.2%. Asian markets were up Monday after the open. MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan rose 1.36%, and Japan's Nikkei was up a similar amount, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index jumped 1.5%. The positive trend spread to Europe, where shares were also up. The Pan-European Stock 600 climbed 1.1% in early trade. The shutdown has taken a growing toll on the US economy. Federal workers from airports to law enforcement and the military have gone unpaid, while the central bank deals with limited government reporting of economic data. White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett warned the country's fourth quarter GDP could be negative if the shutdown dragged on.
Air travel across the United States is in turmoil as the government shutdown triggers massive flight cancellations and delays. According to flight tracking website FlightAware, more than 1,600 flights have been canceled so far today, with another 3,300 delayed. More than 2,700 flights were canceled yesterday and over 10,000 delayed, marking the worst day of travel disruptions since the shutdown began. The FAA continues to grapple with severe staffing shortages in air traffic control towers across the nation. Delta Airlines has been particularly hard hit, canceling or delaying more than half of its mainline flights. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy said earlier the FAA would not cut any international flights, as it would be a violation of international agreements. Here's a Southwest airline pilot urging passengers yesterday to call their senators. Watch.
I don't really care what your political persuasion is, but you should really call your senator. Because I'll tell you, this is costing the airlines millions of dollars. And just think of 30 airplanes with one engine running. And it's going to take us at least 90 minutes to take off. So right now we're at a 4% reduction in flight capacity. Next week we go to 10. Last night I had a 6-hour delay in Houston, and the weather was perfect. It's because the air traffic controllers aren't getting paid.
As flight cancellations continue, President Trump is asking air traffic controllers to return to work today. Government-directed flight cuts and air traffic staffing absences continue to affect U.S. air travel. Trump says, quote, all air traffic controllers must get back to work, adding that he will be recommending a bonus of $10,000 per person for those who didn't stop working during the government shutdown. The president says the people who didn't work during the shutdown did a disservice to their country. He added that workers would have gotten paid despite the issues in Congress. A federal appeals court has upheld an order requiring the Trump administration to fully fund November SNAP benefits. The First Circuit declined to pause a Rhode Island judge's ruling directing the USDA to use $4 billion originally designated for other purposes to ensure full food aid payments. But the decision has no immediate effect. Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson has placed a temporary hold on the lower court order. It will remain in place for 48 hours after the appeals court action. And this morning, the Trump administration returned to the Supreme Court in a push to keep full SNAP payments. Over the weekend, USDA instructed states to reverse any efforts to issue full SNAP benefits before Jackson's hold or risk financial penalties. The administration maintains that only Congress can authorize new spending and blames lawmakers for the crisis. President Trump has pardoned a number of prominent figures involving in challenging the 2020 election outcome, including Rudy Giuliani. U.S. pardoned attorney Ed Martin shared a proclamation document yesterday on social media. It named more than 70 people, including Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, John Eastman, and Mark Meadows. The pardons apply to conduct tied to the individual's involvement in activities surrounding the 2020 presidential election. It also includes any conduct related to, quote, their efforts to expose voting fraud and vulnerabilities in the 2020 presidential election. The document also states, quote, this proclamation ends a grave national injustice perpetrated upon the American people following the 2020 presidential election and continues the process of national reconciliation. The proclamation also states the pardon does not apply to Trump himself. From Hungary to Belarus, President Trump is stepping up diplomatic outreach with key world leaders. NTD's Daniel Monahan looks at the latest developments, including a new envoy working to free detainees.
Hungary has reached a new financial agreement with the United States. Prime Minister Viktor Orban says the deal provides a financial shield to protect Hungary from potential economic disruptions. It follows Orban's Friday meeting with President Trump at the White House, where the leaders discussed sanction relief on Russian oil and gas. The U.S. granted Hungary a one-year exemption from those sanctions. Orban says it's essential for his landlocked country, which relies heavily on Russian energy supplies. He did not disclose the terms of the financial shield, but said it ensures U.S. support for Hungary's financial stability. The State Department last week said Hungary agreed to buy U.S. liquefied natural gas, expected to be worth about $600 million, and to deepen cooperation on nuclear energy, including small modular reactors. Hungary will also purchase nuclear fuel from U.S.-based Westinghouse Electric. Turning to Belarus, President Trump gave an update on his choice for special envoy to Minsk, John Cole, who helped negotiate the release of prisoners from the country. Cole says he will continue pushing for the release of more detainees. Trump has increased U.S. engagement with the authoritarian state, sending multiple delegations to Minsk this year. Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko is a close ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin. In September, Belarus freed 52 prisoners after an appeal from Trump. He had previously urged Lukashenko to release 1,400 detainees, who Trump has described as hostages. Trump wrote on Truth Social that Cole has already successfully negotiated the release of 100 hostages and is going for an additional 50. Trump added that he would like to thank Lukashenko in advance for his consideration on the release of the additional people. Lukashenko's September release was the largest mass pardon in years, part of his effort to improve relations with Washington. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Republican Governor Greg Abbott of Texas says he plans to run for re-election. Abbott will seek his fourth term next year. The 67-year-old made his announcement at a golf course in Houston yesterday. He described the state as the heartbeat of America and said the Texas economy was growing twice as fast as the U.S. economy. Abbott has been a staunch supporter of President Trump and has supported his immigration enforcement operations. An influx of cash could be handed to millions of Americans. President Trump announced plans yesterday to offer $2,000 payments funded by tariff revenue to people outside high-income brackets. We'll have discussion about that after the break.
Food. It fuels our bodies, nourishes our spirits, and brings us together. Because we all need nutritious food to thrive.
Food gives me energy and it also helps me focus.
But not everyone knows where their next meal is coming from. And 1 in 7 people in America face hunger. It's tougher than ever for too many of us. But the simple truth is, ending hunger is possible, and it starts with you. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, to help families in your community facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. Your monthly gift delivers food where it's needed most, puts fresh food on the table, and helps kids have healthy meals all year round, even when school is out.
You can see the difference with the kids when they're full. Food is everything.
Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org. Give $19 a month. Your first gift can double an impact. And we'll send you this free canvas grocery bag as a reminder of how you're helping to end hunger for good.
When it comes down to it, it's about taking care of your family first and the loved ones that you need to provide for.
Food donations help me tremendously, and I'm very grateful for the food bank.
I have hope.
The simple truth is, ending hunger in America is possible. You can help make it happen. The need is urgent. Call or go online now to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
Silver is the precious metal of the future. Judge Napolitano here. Since 2020, the silver price has risen as much as 190%. Why? In each of the last 4 years, rising demand for solar and electric vehicles alone has put silver supply into a deficit. But now there's another industry. AI, data centers, robots, and quantum computing could require so much silver that silver supplies could be obliterated.
Could silver rise another 190% within 5 years? Find out in this new report, The AI Revolution.
I bought silver and my investment is up 85%. With billions being poured into AI, it makes sense to consider silver.
Call Lear Capital to get your free report, The AI Revolution, and see why it could bring record high silver. And with a qualified purchase, get up to $20,000 in bonus silver. Call 800-885-6000. 800-885-6000. 800-885-6000.
An influx of cash could be headed to millions of Americans. President Trump announced plans yesterday to offer $2,000 payments funded by tariff revenue to people outside high-income brackets. Trump wrote on Truth Social that the U.S. is taking in trillions of dollars and will soon begin paying down what he called the nation's enormous debt. He also highlighted what he described as record investment in new plants and factories nationwide. The plan would likely require congressional approval. Trump first raised the idea of a $2,000 tariff-funded dividend in early October. His latest announcement came just days after the Supreme Court heard arguments on the legality of his global tariff strategy. The president also said today that all leftover tariff revenue after $2,000 checks will be used to pay down national debt. And to talk more about this, joining us is Daniel Lacalle, the chief economist at Tressis and an international financial analyst, also the author of the book Freedom or Equality. So Daniel, always great to see you. So can we talk about the order of payments here? Because you just heard President Trump says he's going to pay households and then he's going to pay down the national debt.
Well, obviously, I think that the plan is to first get the public accounts in order and then look for the opportunity to use part of these revenues to reduce the challenges that some of the families in the United States are facing. No, and obviously that $2,000 check is a very good idea once you take into account that the first and foremost objective has to be to control the national debt. And the national debt is obviously number one priority, has to be reducing the deficit to a sustainable level. I think that all those efforts are being taken. And obviously, if he comes, if the tariff revenues come to the figures that he has mentioned, about $1 trillion, etc., that would obviously be plenty to reduce the deficit by less than half of what it was, and at the same time pay these $2,000 checks.
So, Daniel, if this in fact happens, where people get $2,000 checks, do you think that's going to be a boost for the U.S. economy?
Obviously, there's always a debate about the impact of these checks. Now we remember what happened with the stimulus checks of the COVID period. No, I think that what they do is more to provide a certain level of relief to citizens that are either entering into too much debt or that have some financial difficulties. So I personally don't care if people are going to use it for saving, to put it in the stock market, or to pay down debt. I think that all of those are perfectly positive outcomes. No, I think that what is important is that once the deficit is under control and once the level of debt of the United States to GDP is declining, and obviously if the economy is growing at a 3.8% and it brings down the deficit to half in dollar terms what it was, obviously that would be the case, then that would be a boost to the economy. But we cannot expect a massive increase in consumption. I am always aware that a tremendous number of people are going to be using it to pay down credit card debt, which is perfectly fine with me, or to invest in the stock market, which is also perfectly fine with me. I think that what is important is that those revenues that are coming from the trade agreement are used to the best possible solution. No, so on the one hand, if you think about this, bringing down the deficit means that the tax cuts that have been implemented can be increased. So that is a positive for citizens and their affordability. No, and number two, if they on top of that get a stimulus check, that can certainly be a relief. But I would consider it from that perspective. First, bringing down the deficit. Second, obviously, looking at what to do with these enormous, absolutely, and much higher than expected, to be fairly honest, revenues coming from tariffs.
So you raised the issue of stimulus checks. So how is this different from the stimulus checks that we got during the pandemic that actually fueled inflation?
Oh, absolutely different. It's a great question, because a lot of people say, oh, this is going to drive inflation higher. No, because the stimulus checks were paid with newly created money, with new deficit, with more money printing, more government spending, more debt. Okay, so and this is something that is sharing with citizens an external revenue. So this is not newly created money. This is not inflationary, and it's a huge difference. Big difference to print money to provide a stimulus that obviously then backlashes and boomerangs into inflationary effects, than to use revenues that are coming from abroad to relieve those citizens that are in a more difficult position.
So Daniel, can you explain a little bit to us a bit more? I know you talked about this in the past, but who pays for tariffs? If American companies, some of them do in fact pay for these tariffs, and then the money is then given back to Americans, would some people argue that this is wealth redistribution?
Well, it's not wealth redistribution. First, I think it's pretty evident that the tariffs are not paid by American consumers. I think it's very simple. If tariffs were paid by American consumers, no country in the world would have raised their eyes and lifted their hands to reach a trade agreement. They would have just said, come on, let's go and let's send our products at a much higher price. It is pretty evident that global supply chains have enormous levels of overcapacity, and that tariffs are being absorbed throughout the highest level of overcapacity in those chains. However, even if you have some companies that have experienced an increase in costs because of tariffs, then the tariff is not going into maintaining margins. It's maybe eroding a little bit their margins. But it's good ultimately that some consumers receive the revenues from tariffs. Ultimately, every single measure of stimulus plan or every single measure of payment to the disadvantaged is a measure of redistribution. But this is not redistribution. American companies are doing phenomenally. American companies are not paying higher prices. When you look at the ISM prices paid, it is in line with the last 12 months. The only thing that the United States truly needs to deal with in order to bring down inflation and the cost of living is to reduce government spending, which means reducing the amount of money in the system, reducing newly created money, which is what creates inflation, which is obviously not, inflation is not the increase in prices. Inflation is the reduction in the purchasing power of the currency. So I think that ultimately the vast majority of the US economy benefits from receiving more revenues from tariffs, getting a level playing field in trade that allows American companies to trade in a more logical and just way with the rest of the world. And if there is a control of the deficit and a control of the spending, as I expect to happen in 25-26, obviously to get a stimulus check of this.
So Daniel, how do you think American trading partners will feel about tariffs being given to U.S. households? And keeping in mind, these Americans that are getting the checks potentially, are voters, right? So how do you think our trading partners might feel about that?
Well, let's think how the American people are thinking about the enormity of tariffs that the United States companies are suffering from the European Union that are then used to massively bloat government spending and entitlement spending in France or in Germany. Ultimately, we're talking about management of public finances, and it is, I don't think that you can actually go to any of the US trading partners from China to the European Union to the UK and think that this is an unfair way of using tariff revenues when the European Union is using its gigantic trade surplus with the United States to finance its enormous level of government spending and of different social programs, the same as the UK. And nobody seems to be saying that Americans are paying for French pensions or that Americans are paying for UK roads, no?
No question, Daniel. And you mentioned the stock market earlier, like potentially people might invest in it. If they put the $2,000 into the stock market, do you think it could benefit the stock market in terms of it rising further?
Yeah, absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. But more importantly, it allows a lot of people that are not invested in the US stock market to benefit from the improvement in profits and the improvement of the economy. I think that ultimately, when you look at all of this, what the Trump administration is trying to achieve is pretty much what the UK tried to do in the late 70s, what the United States also did in the early 80s, which is to make the benefits of the strength of corporations, of the American economy, of all of the different aspects that generate wealth available to all citizens. If they want to invest in the stock market or in Bitcoin for that matter, it doesn't matter. It is always a positive, and it is a much better way of making the people understand that this is a positive for them than to finance enormous government stimulus packages like the Build Back Better or the Inflation Reduction Act that don't build and don't reduce inflation.
Well, okay, Daniel, it's always enjoyable to hear your valuable insight. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you very much, Don. Have a great day.
The Trump administration has declared the first week of November as Anti-Communism Week. In a proclamation, the White House explained that this is a solemn remembrance of the devastation caused by the ideology. It said the U.S. is honoring the victims of oppression and ensuring the end of communism. It went on to say that the U.S. stands united in its defense of the values that define our nation as a free people. President Trump declared the week of November 2nd to the 8th as Anti-Communism Week. And a call to remember, November 7th marked the National Day for the Victims of Communism. In Atlanta, Georgia, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation held its Roll Call of Nations ceremony to honor more than 100 million victims of communist regimes worldwide. Let's take a look.
November 7th is National Day for the Victims of Communism. It marks the date of the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, which initiated the spread of communist regimes. On the 108th anniversary of that day, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation held its Roll Call of Nations ceremony in Atlanta, Georgia.
This event commemorates the real flesh and blood families, individuals, people murdered by communism in the past. And at the same token, we are bearing witness that the crimes of communism are not over. They happen in places like China and North Korea and Cuba to this very day.
The event honors over 100 million lives crushed by communist regimes worldwide, featuring speeches from survivors and descendants. Dr. Eric Patterson is the president and CEO of the foundation.
It uses its guns and tanks and walls to keep its own people in, to repress its own people.
Jose Perez is a Cuban refugee and retired economist. He fled the country at age 12 in 1962. As a child, he witnessed televised execution under Fidel Castro's regime.
And he came in, Castro, and he said, that one should be guilty, that one is guilty. Then they set up kangaroo courts, and they condemned him, and they shot him. This little kid watched it on TV, and we saw these people just rolled over and fall dead. You go, that doesn't leave your mind as a young man.
Perez served on the Board of Regents for the University System of Georgia. He advocated for the state to establish a curriculum that teaches about communism's evils at the state level, which has now been implemented. Dr. Patterson also addressed the brutal persecution against Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa. The spiritual group is under severe repression by the communist regime in China.
It's been 26 years now since the terrible repression began in 1999 against Falun Dafa, and this is one of the most insidious recent persecutions, with the well-documented by our organization and others, organ harvesting, and many, many other crimes against those people.
Andrea Lauer-Rice is the president of the Hungarian-American Coalition. Her family was part of the 1956 Hungarian Revolution.
Every family member was involved in fighting for their freedom in some way.
She also says the recent New York City election presents an opportunity to teach young people more about communism.
Instead of just being horrified by the New York election results, we can look at it as an opportunity to teach the next generation that this ideology is an anathema to our American values.
Dr. Patterson said he hopes the event will raise awareness about the crimes of communism and help the next generation take a firm stand against today's communists.
7 Democrats broke ranks to advance a bill to end the government shutdown. 2 strategists join us to explain what's next. Stay tuned.
Being a cowboy, I don't know anything different from when I was 3 or 4 years old. I did tough things. I thought everybody needed to do tough things, and if you didn't, I didn't have time for it. I had a very successful career at a very young age, and life was fast. I was preparing physically. I wasn't doing anything mentally on the inside. And then I got hurt. I wanted to be better as a person, and I really dug into mental health. I start my day with 20-minute workouts. I live life 8 seconds at a time. Horses are so therapeutic. They know what you're feeling. When you're nervous, they're nervous. You won't say it back, but we're pals. I take a lot of responsibility in taking care of my kids, my family, and being there for them. You're gonna have tough days. Everybody does. Find a place to stop and just breathe. Love your mind.
We
said we'd never give in to a meltdown.
Okay.
And we'd never babysit with a screen. We said we'd never let the toys take over.
Mariella!
Never leave the house looking, well, and never let them out of our sight. Skylar, come here. Cars get hot fast, and kids can be at risk. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how's sketches? Ready? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending. Right, backpack kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on.
To the left. To the right. Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
The FDA is taking steps to remove its highest type of warning from many hormone treatments for women with menopause symptoms. Today, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. called this a new era in women's health.
For more than 2 decades, the American medical establishment turns its back on women. Millions of women were told to fear the very therapy that could have given them strength, peace, and dignity through one of life's most difficult transitions, menopause. That ends today. The FDA is initiating the removal of a broad black box warnings from hormone replacement therapy products for menopause.
The black box warning is the strongest alert the FDA can require. Hormone therapy has been on the market for a long time, but prescriptions plummeted in 2003 when the warnings were added. The labels warn menopause treatments that contain estrogen can increase the risk of uterine and breast cancers and blood clots. The black box or boxed warning was added after a large study found some higher health risks for women taking estrogen pills after menopause. More recent analyses have shown hormone therapy started within 10 years of starting menopause can safely help manage menopausal symptoms. 2 top executives at the BBC quit yesterday following accusations of bias at the British broadcaster. One complaint involved a speech by President Trump in 2020. Here are the details.
2 top leaders of Britain's BBC resigned on Sunday amid allegations of bias at the broadcaster, including over the editing of a speech by President Donald Trump. Director General Tim Davie, the BBC's most senior executive, quit after an internal memo leaked by the Daily Telegraph newspaper had cited a string of failings. That included coverage of the Israel-Hamas war, trans issues, and edits of a speech made by Trump in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021. The BBC's flagship Panorama show was found, according to the memo, to have edited 2 parts of Trump's speech together, so that it appeared he had encouraged the Capitol riot later that day. That documentary showed this part of Trump's speech.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
But in the Panorama episode, "We're Going to Walk Down to the Capitol" was shown cut together with other parts of his speech, including close to its end, where Trump said, "We fight like hell." Davie has led the BBC since 2020. He said he decided to leave after, quote, reflecting on the very intense personal and professional demands of managing this role over many years in these febrile times. The CEO of BBC News, Deborah Turness, also resigned Sunday. In an email to staff, she said, quote, "I want to be absolutely clear, recent allegations that BBC News is institutionally biased are wrong." Trump welcomed the departures, criticizing the two as very dishonest people. The leaked internal report had also said BBC Arabic had showed anti-Israel bias in its reporting of the war on Gaza, and that stories which raised difficult questions around trans issues have been suppressed by a small group of staff.
BBC News CEO Deborah Turness was in London to see her legal teams earlier today. She took questions from local media. Take a listen.
I stepped down over the weekend because the buck stops with me. And if you'll excuse
why did you fail to deal with the mistakes that were made?
And see my teams. Thank you so much for being here.
Do you think that the journalists are corrupt like President Trump says? Do you think the journalists
Of course our journalists aren't corrupt. Our journalists are hard-working people who strive for impartiality, and I will stand by their journalism.
Is there institutional bias at the BBC?
There is no institutional bias. Mistakes are made, but there's no institutional bias.
But why weren't the mistakes dealt with on Trump, on anti-Semitism, on women's rights?
I'm sure that story will emerge, but for now I'm going to go in and see our team.
BBC Chair Samir Shah also apologized for an error of judgment in editing the Trump speech. Shah said the BBC had reviewed the footage and acknowledged it should have been clearer about changes made to the original remarks. Shah wrote to British lawmakers, quote, "It is absolutely clear the BBC must champion impartiality." Meanwhile, the BBC said today it had received a letter from President Trump threatening legal action. The broadcaster said it will respond in due course. The Senate has agreed to advance a bill to end the government shutdown. Joining us to discuss is Brian Lieb, a political strategist and CEO of Henry Public Relations, and we have George Carrillo, former Democratic candidate for governor of Oregon and former director of social determinants of health for Oregon. So, of course, good to have you both. Brian, I'll start with you today. 7 Democrats broke party lines, voted for the bill. This is a procedural vote. And Senate Majority Leader John Thune promised that the Senate will take up a vote on extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies later this year. So that's the overall gist of what happened. Brian, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, as someone that felt this government shutdown pain personally on Saturday trying to get home at the airport, I could tell you that I'm very happy that several Senate Democrats have decided to vote along with their Republican colleagues to reopen the government. At the end of the day, our politicians, whether they're on the left or the right, they were not the ones that were feeling the pain of this government shutdown. It was us, the American people, that felt the pain. And so I'm very happy that you have quite a bit of Senate Democrats that are willing to cross party lines to reopen the government. But I think once we get through this, if I'm being honest with you and with the audience, we've got to find a way to stop governing in this country from one continuing resolution to another, because these situations, they happen every single time. So bottom line, very happy to see Democrats and Republicans coming together to reopen the government.
Right. I think a lot of people would agree with you on the CR point, Brian. So, George, now let me go to you. How do you feel about the current situation as it stands?
Well, I'm disappointed in the Democratic Party. We had our biggest win last week where we swept the elections on Tuesday night. And then here, Senator Schumer proposed, I think, a good compromise on the ACA subsidies on Friday. And we didn't allow for enough time for negotiations to further. And Democrats caved, the ones that voted yes on this. So it's a double-edged sword for me because, yes, it's great that we're opening up the government, but also, too, the Democratic Party, they came out and said, Senator King came out today and said, that they can win against Trump. And so this is the outcome. So what was the point of these past 40 days of this government shutdown?
Okay, so Brian, what do you think about what George said? He sort of, raised the point that perhaps Democrats caved in this situation. What do you think ultimately persuaded the 7 Democrats to vote for this bill?
Well, with respect to my co-panelists, I think it's very unfortunate that someone is saying that they're not happy that the government is reopening. The fact that some of his Democratic colleagues in the Senate decided to cross party lines shows that bipartisanship still exists in this country. And I think that's a pretty positive thing for all of us to be happy about and be hopeful about, especially in the world of politics in America where everything is very divisive. But listen, for the Senate Democrats that decided to cross party lines and make a deal with Republicans, I give them an enormous amount of credit for stepping up and doing the right thing for the American people, regardless of their party. It was the right thing for every politician, regardless of being a Democrat or Republican, to do the right thing for the American people, to find a way to come to some kind of compromise and reopen the government.
So, George, didn't Democrats get a stopgap funding measure rather than a full fiscal year funding package? Because it buys Democrats more time to negotiate, right? By not locking into a full year package right now.
Right, but right now what's going to be compromised is those ACA subsidies. What's disappointing in this matter is that there's going to be about 20 million Americans that may possibly lose their health care. So we're talking about less accessibility. This was the right fight to have. Republicans were not negotiating with Democrats. And so we were standing strong on these healthcare subsidies. The president was trying to use not paying SNAP benefits as one of his tactics to put more pressure on the Democratic Party. The courts came in and said that Trump was overreaching like he has been. And so right here, where the disappointing point for myself and for the Democratic Party is that we're not really having compromises. This is a tug and war situation right now that's happening. And in the end, it's still going to be Americans that are going to lose out. Remember, there's going to be about 20 million people that are going to lose their health care. That is not a win in reopening the government.
Okay, Brian, do you think this bill addressed concerns on both sides of the aisle?
Well, I think the very kind of definition of compromise means that both sides are going to lose a little and both sides are going to win a little. So in a situation like we have right now, that's what happened. There's some things that Republicans wanted, there's some things that Democrats wanted, and both sides didn't get it, and they had to meet in the middle, and they had to compromise. But I want to just come back to the earlier point that I made. I mean, the fact that in 2025 and going on almost 250 years of our great country being in existence, that we're still governing from one CR to another, one crisis, to another, really got to find a way to do this better. Because trust me, the American people, regardless if you're, a Republican like myself or a Democrat like my colleague here, I don't think any of us are very happy to see grown men and women not being able to come to terms, for deals like this. So, I think it's a bigger issue in terms of how we're funding the government and the kind of money that we're spending in the first place. But bottom line is I'm pretty happy that our government's hopefully going to be reopening very soon.
So, George, maybe you can address what Brian said about going from one CR to the next.
So right now, our system of government right now isn't working for the American people. It's not about which side is losing. It's about the American people that are losing. We're seeing the top 1% get richer, and we're seeing the middle class and below really lose out on opportunities. We're seeing a weakened economy. We're seeing the US dollar being weakened. There's a lot of things that are happening right now that we're not addressing. And the people that are losing out are not the politicians. It's us. It's the American people that are losing out. So we really do need to look at our system of government, having a better checks and balance in our system, and being able to really compromise with each other and having conversations. The behavior of the House and what they've been doing by sending everybody home and not having conversations and figuring out how do we end this government shutdown and just keeping everybody home is not compromise. That's not good governance. And also on the Democratic Party too. They stood their ground and then they folded. And so now you look back at what was the point of the last 40 days? Why did we even go through this? I think both parties here are to blame, and we do need a better system of governance, but we need to start electing new people that understand the way governance should happen and how we need to proceed, and having conversations of each bill.
But George, Democrats did get a promise from John Thune that they're going to take up the ACA at a later date.
And we know right now that there's no votes in the Senate, that it's not going to pass. They didn't want to have a conversation about it while the government was shut down. Why are they now going to pass, these ACH credits now? Republicans have not proposed any new plan in creating better accessibility to healthcare for millions of Americans. So it doesn't bring me, the only thing that this does is going to put Republicans on the record of how they voted on this single action. And that's it. And still, at the end of the day, we're going to see millions of people lose out on accessibility to healthcare.
So, Brian, what do you think about the vote that was promised on ACA? How do you think that's going to go in the future?
I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think everyone's trying to negotiate in good faith right now. But listen, at the end of the day, the American people and the tens of thousands of people, the hundreds of thousands of troops that have been without pay now for over 35 days, they're the ones that are going to benefit from this. And again, have to go back to the fact that, this is a compromise. So there's things that the right wanted, the left wanted, both sides are not getting everything that they wanted. And they have to reach a compromise to reopen our government. And at the end of the day, it's the American people that are going to benefit from the government being reopened. So, yeah, I unfortunately don't share the opinion of my friends here. And I'm, pretty happy that the government's reopening. And I think it shows that bipartisanship is still alive in this country. And, I'm sorry that, you're disappointed in your Democrats for not holding the line. But at the end of the day, I think the Democrats that decided to cross party lines are doing the right thing for the American people.
George, how do you respond to Brian saying that bipartisanship is still well and alive in America today?
I don't believe it's not, because I don't know what Republicans didn't get. They voted on a bill and nothing has changed from that bill. The only thing that's changed now is that we're going to have SNAP funded. So when we go through this exercise again in the end of June, they're not going to be able to use SNAP benefits for hostage how they did in this situation. So if we want to have better compromise, let's start playing by some fair rules and not putting this political pressure on the people like our federal employees who were also laid off during this time. The president took advantage of the situation. He has been able to keep funding mass immigration, keeping ICE paid for, but somehow doesn't have money to pay Americans who are going hungry every day through this government shutdown. He has played dirty politics in this, and Democrats at this point couldn't figure out how to continue to battle the president and come up with accessible access to healthcare. And so this right now, we'll see in the midterm elections how voters will vote. But I don't believe compromise is happening right now. It's political pressure that's happening.
But George, the bill prevents federal workers from layoffs, which is something that President Trump wanted to do, right, during the shutdown. Do you see this as a concession on the Republicans' part?
That's a small concession. I think, no matter what, the president's still going to try to continue to lay off employees. And we're only talking about the employees that he laid off during the shutdown. We're not talking about the hundreds of thousands of people that have already been laid off since he's taken office. So the government already has shrank. We're talking about a few hundred people that have lost their job during this shutdown. He's not going to be able to do again. But we'll see what happens, the next time we go through this exercise towards the end of June. We'll see if Republicans are actually willing to have that compromise and prevent another shutdown from happening.
Okay, Brian, we just have a bit of time left. If you have any final thoughts you would like to share right now.
I just want to address a comment that he made in that House Republicans and House Democrats were sent home by the Speaker. The House Republicans have voted countless times now to reopen the government, so there's really nothing respectfully that they can be doing by sitting in Washington D.C. right now. So I think it's better, honestly, that they're back in their districts and they're doing things to meet with their constituents than sitting in Washington and doing nothing. And just in closing, again, I've said this, I think, 2 or 3 times now. This shows that there is bipartisanship that still is alive in this country. I applaud the Senate Democrats that cross party lines to make this happen. And listen, I think at the end of the day, if there's issues that are going to benefit the American people, the Republicans stand ready to tackle them head on. And everything in politics is always going to be a compromise.
Well, I think both of you presented your own arguments very well. Brian, George, thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
Thousands attended the National Veterans Parade in the nation's capital over the weekend. Pardon me. Honoring the courage and sacrifice those serving in uniform gave to our country. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the story.
America, Here in the nation's capital, we celebrate veterans here at this parade with the Grand Marshal General Michael Flynn and many people paying tribute to veterans here around the world.
This is the National Veterans Parade Foundation that's putting on the only nationally recognized veterans parade in the country. Despite the government shutdown, this parade is going on without a penny from the U.S. government. And you can see that beautiful flag up there. So that's the fire department of Washington, D.C. that did this for us, and they're just wonderful, wonderful people.
This is the third annual National Veterans Parade, held right in front of the National Archives on Sunday, filled with veterans groups and marching bands. And it's taking place despite the government shutdown, with the help of grassroots support from private donations and sponsors.
Yeah, so I'm actually the daughter of a veteran, come from a long line of veterans, and so getting to spend days like this where we all come together and we acknowledge that service and that sacrifice that so many gave.
They have kept peace for 250 years. And it will be another 250 years for our next generation.
We are able to walk in the streets free today because of people like that.
I think it's very important that we celebrate those who have fought for us and just come together as a community. It's so incredible to see the way that they selflessly give their lives to serve our country. We're protecting our nation's heroes by honoring them today. And I think
the event highlighted veterans facing suicide when they come home from service.
I think there's a misconception so often that they are some of the strongest and they have to remain that. But asking for help does not make you weak. Asking for help proves how strong you are.
Honoring them with the Spartan Pledge.
And what the Spartan Pledge is, it's a promise that us veterans or first responders, they make to one another for that they won't take their own life, they won't commit suicide, because as people know, we lose over 22 vets a day to suicide.
The Spartan sword was made with steel crafted from the Twin Towers in New York City, honoring veterans and first responders alike.
That is a symbol of what our country went through 25 years ago. And it means a lot to me as a veteran, because I had to respond. I had to go to Afghanistan after 9/11. The firefighters, all the ambulance drivers, and the police officers that rushed into those Twin Towers that day. The Spartan Pledge is not only for veterans but first responders, because on that day they were the warriors that were going in trying to save the people.
As we celebrate veterans on this wonderful day, we give thanks to all of the veterans who gave their sacrifice so that we can enjoy our freedoms here in USA. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Vice President J.D. Vance attending the Marine Corps 250th birthday ball in Washington. We discussed the significance of the day with someone who has served 24 years in active duty. Stay with us for after this break.
That truly matters for each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. Shen Yun. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.
Don't wait. Call now to find out about our Medicare plan.
Why do we have to sit through so many Medicare commercials this time of year? It's endless.
Good question, Edith. I'm glad you asked. We see so many commercials this time of year because it's the only time, other than special circumstances, when Medicare recipients can change their plan for Part C. Original Medicare only covers Parts A and B, but a Medicare Advantage plan has additional benefits that Original Medicare doesn't offer.
So now's the time to fill those spaces?
That's right, Archie. And every year, there are changes to what benefits you may receive from your Part C plan. Call right now to find out what plan best suits your needs.
It's easy, easy, don't delay. Pick up the phone and call today.
Call now for your free Medicare review.
1-833-469-1754. 1-833-469-1754.
You may now return to your regularly scheduled programming.
According to ancient Chinese medicine, Purslane is considered a medicinal herb and is used to help lower cholesterol, improve vascular functions, and prevent diabetes. Perilla seeds can nourish the lungs and spleen. It is used to treat asthma and improve pulmonary functions. Puritan green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds from Hwangmae Mountain in South Korea. It contains over 90% of omega-3, 6, 7, and 9. The highest concentration possible without chemical additives. The soft gel is made of natural seaweed